Welcome back to the United Pubcast. As my dog has just heard the breaking news, he's just shit himself that the Glazers are selling the club. So that is what we're live for. Apologies about that to my little pup, but we are sort of live, impromptu, 8 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday morning after the Socceroos unfortunately lost to France. I think it finished 4-1, but we'll dissect all that a little bit later. But what an eventful day, Larry. So we have just gone live just to sort of dissect it all because last night, a few hours ago, we're watching Argentina. Lionel Messi sort of leading Argentina to glory, puts them in the lead. Suddenly, Saudi Arabia turn it around, and what a fantastic win for them. Two sort of maybe subpar games in the middle of the night, 2-0 all draws. Then obviously Australia take place. Obviously took the lead against France. What an unbelievable story that could have been. France sort of kick in the gear and they sort of get the result done. But in the midst of all that, Ronaldo leaves Manchester United. Should be a bigger story than what it is, but unfortunately the way it's panned out, it's kind of okay, that is what it is. But ultimately, you isolate the news. Ronaldo has been sacked by Manchester United. Unbelievable. An hour later, 17 years in the making. Look, nothing's confirmed in regards to how this will eventuate, but the murmurs are, and the sort of official news is leaking that Manchester United, the owners, the Glazers, are looking to sell. Now, we'll get into the likelihood of that, how long that will take, and are they going to sell a share of the club? Are they going to sell the whole club? That's obviously a discussion we're going to have, but you talk about eventful days, Larry. This has been one of them.
Absolutely. And when do you start? I mean, there's so many things that are happening. It's absolutely crazy. Let's start on Cristiano Ronaldo, Tom. Are you surprised at how quickly United have dealt with this? I got to say I am. And I'm just wondering, has Ronaldo almost instructed his lawyers to maybe thinking, oh, I've got the World Cup. I can't do with any distractions. He probably knew going into this. I imagine he was advised that this was a likely outcome.
Oh, look, while it's a sacking, and we always sort of roll our eyes at mutual consent when a manager leaves. The manager leaves by mutual agreement. We all sort of, oh yeah, okay, well, it is what it is. He's been sacked. This one, he has been sacked, but mutual consent. But it is kind of mutual. So my big fear in regards to this, sort of when we look at Ronaldo's legacy in terms of how this was going to unfold, was the one or two reports that Man United were going to look to sue Ronaldo in regards to the way he brought the club into disrepute. And I thought that was just an avenue you don't need to go down. He's let himself down. Move on. Okay, to drag this out in court in terms of wages and everything, I think it is good. How mutual it is, obviously only the two parties do know. But I think sort of on the outlook, it does look a very mutual agreement, which is both best for the player and more importantly, better for the club. So we'll just say good day to some people who have joined us in this early morning in Sydney. Do let us know if you're watching anywhere else around the world. But good to have everyone in the chat. Isaac here. I hope they fully sell rather than allow investment from others. It's an interesting point because the first quote I did see, or the first bit of news, was they're looking at possibilities in regards to selling. I didn't say they're going to sell the whole club, but I think the Athletic will come out with a report saying they've instructed the banks to facilitate a sale with the club, which will be interesting. Chris here, good to see us. I had a chat with him earlier this morning about the France game. Was the Ronaldo interview the final straw to make the Glazers realise they just can't keep buying players? The club needs actual investment. Ronaldo called them out. No big players will want to come now. Look, we'll tie this into the Ronaldo discussion in regards to this is not an overnight decision by the Glazers. You would think this is a business decision that sort of takes years in the making, but ultimately it coincides with this Ronaldo interview and what he said. And I thought it's disappointing how this Ronaldo interview eventuated, but ultimately I thought some good of it will come. But I thought that was maybe in 5 years. I didn't think it would come in 5 minutes. Now I'll get your opinion a little bit later in regards to what impact this Ronaldo interview has had. George, good to see you, mate. A few people. Rob, obviously, I would say good morning, but obviously up early watching the Socceroos with a few mates in the family. Steve, good to see you, mate, as always. And Emad here, don't let the door hit him on the way out. The Ronaldo discussion, it is what it is. I think we've had the discussion. Everyone's very angry at him at the moment, and he didn't do this interview to get the Glazers out. He did this interview to sort of save face and sort of bit of positive PR, but ultimately we can look at it from a Man United point of view. And if it has proved, which, look, who knows, but it has proved a little bit of a tipping point and maybe accelerating something. As I said, when Ralph Rangnick calls out the Glazers, nothing. When Gary Neville calls out the Glazers, nothing. When no one else does, nothing's going to happen. When Ronaldo talks, the Glazers will listen and investors will listen. Now, what impact do you think, again, through no desire of Ronaldo, but just the result of what he has said, has impacted in regards to this decision?
Yeah, look, I don't know if the Glazers are really reacting to the Ronaldo news. I think this has been in the pipeline for a little while, and I think we can actually trace it back to the Super League. I think you can go back to that window and actually say that was the Glazers' get out of jail card. If you look at the amount of debt that Manchester United have incurred, and you just look at the level now that is required for a football club to remain competitive, let alone be afloat. If you want to be at the top of European football, which Manchester United, and I do believe the Glazers do want United to be successful. I don't really buy into this narrative that they want just to finish top four. I don't. I actually think they just don't have the financial capital to compete at the top. And you're seeing that through the debt at the club, through the investment in the stadium. The Super League was their get out of jail card, Tom. It would have guaranteed them 300 million every season, and that's not including sponsorship deals. United are getting that sort of profit at the moment. I mean, we most recently United reported a loss, but in general, they had been around that around that 300 million pound mark. So with the Super League now not going ahead, at least in the short term, the Glazers have realized for them to remain competitive, they would need to either get another investor in, which means forfeiting some of the power that they have, or it would need to be a full-fledged sale. And then if you tie that into Ronaldo, where I will say it potentially has had an impact, we did mention Ronaldo in his interview did name drop. The Glazers said they don't care about the club, said that they're marketing people. That's not good PR. I don't care what you say. If you're a sponsor, if you're someone looking to support Manchester United, or if you're an existing sponsor, in fact, that's not good for your brand. For someone to say that about the owners, and someone with the profile of Ronaldo, nonetheless. His video has had nearly 10 million interactions. I think the YouTube one with Piers Morgan. It's not good. So if you're the Glazers, how far can they take United now? United, unfortunately for them, are in a position where it needs serious investment. The stadium, the training facilities, the squad, that's going to cost £1 billion. They don't have £1 billion to sell. Sorry, they don't have £1 billion to invest. And I think that's why actually the rubbers hit the road, and I think they will look to sell.
No, definitely. Well, I wanted to not want to touch on Liverpool, but it's interesting in regards to Liverpool putting the club up for sale as well. Obviously, the Fenway Sports Group and the Glazers are very close and sort of same very sort of interests, especially in regards to Super League, American owners. So we'll be interested to see if anything is tied in regards to their relationship.
I should add, Tom, sorry to cut you off, but I should add, I think the other factor that we're not considering here, probably as football fans and not finance experts, raising interest rates, inflation. When you've got £500 million of debt on top of rising interest rates, that's a lot of debt.
The debt's increasing each year as well.
Exactly. And I think ultimately, like we said, I just think with that, the interest repayments now have gone higher as well. So it's a lot of pressure on people who essentially didn't have the funds to buy the club anyway. And I think that's now.
I think that's the thing. They've never been servicing the debt. All they've been doing is the actual interest over the years. The debt's remained the same. Their main focus has been that interest in regards to paying that. But a comment here in regards to Stephen here, because the last bit I want to touch on Ronaldo, because at the end of the day, Ronaldo is not a Manchester United player anymore, and he's one individual. The club is bigger. However, it does tie into this. If this part of the Glazers potential announcement, why didn't we do this earlier? Just want your last thoughts in regards to the way Ronaldo's into and him speaking about the Glazers. The only person I've ever seen, now again, his motives were for himself, but he's the only person I've ever seen criticised for calling out the Glazers. Sir Alex Ferguson didn't do it. We never criticise him for it. Bruno Fernandes doesn't call out the Glazers. We don't call him out. Brian Robson doesn't call out the Glazers. We don't call him out. Cristiano Ronaldo called them out, and we all lose our shit, sort of thing. Now, I understand his motive was different, but ultimately the result hasn't ended up in the Glazers selling, but obviously a little bit of a domino effect. So just your sort of lasting impression on not Ronaldo's relationship with United fans, because that's going to have to take some time to heal, which it definitely will over time. But just your sort of lasting thoughts on what he has said and how it's come about.
Look, ultimately, I'm actually in that camp. I think he's served his self-interest in this interview. He's had 18 months to say something on the Glazers. He said it on the way out, and I believe he's done it to get the result we've seen today with his contract being terminated.
But should we criticise Brian Robson? Should we criticise Sir Alex? Should we criticise Bruno Fernandes if they don't?
Well, they're current employees of the club, and that's where this is different. You know, Ronaldo's trying to get out of his contract. Brian Robson, Sir Alex Ferguson, Bruno Fernandes are currently employed by Manchester United.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but what I mean is we're saying, and look, I completely agree in regards to this as a self-serving interest from Ronaldo, but we're sort of backtracking and criticising him for not saying it a year earlier. Well, I can understand why he didn't say it a year earlier, because he was a Manchester United player then.
I hear what you're saying. Like I said, if the motive for Ronaldo was actually to improve Manchester United, then I'd be all for it. That wasn't his motive here. The motive here was to
Yeah.
get himself out of his contract.
No,
And that's
definitely.
why ultimately I'm critical.
Yeah, no, critical. Look, I understand your thinking. I think it's just one of those things. It's best. It's one of those best for the club, best for the player. The club needed to move on from the individual, and the individual needed to move on somewhere else. So hopefully, both can. Or hopefully, the Glazers don't have a successful time elsewhere. All their businesses fail, to be honest. But hey, mate, it'll be interesting. Okay, Glazers out is one thing. What if new Glazers come in? It'll be very interesting here. We're all celebrating, but hopefully we'll get
I
some oil
can't
money.
foresee that, Tom. I really can't foresee that. I think we need
But
to. The
not so much
question,
Glazers, not so much the Glazers, but what type of owners are going to come in?
ones who are going to understand that they need to spend. Ultimately, I think that that's going to. The thing is, the way the Glazers bought the club, I actually think that's now the UK government are actually putting processes in place and the Premier League to make that kind of buy illegal, to make that kind of purchase illegal. And I think ultimately we can always go back to that moment. The Glazers couldn't afford to run Manchester United. Now, like you've seen with Chelsea, with the Premier League looking at Todd Bowley, and look, morally or not, the Saudis can financially invest in Newcastle. Sheikh Mansour can invest in Manchester City. The case goes on and on and on. I think now the next person who comes in, there will be a requirement to invest. And looking at the criticism of the Glazers, which ultimately led to Ronaldo making the comments he made, you don't want to, surely if you're a potential buyer or buyers, you're going to look at that saying, all right, no, we need to turn this club around. We can't look to go in there and serve our own interests. Mind you, let me say, if there are investors out there who are willing to see out the long road, who are willing to invest and run the club at a loss for the next 5 or so years, they will be in a position to be like the Glazers and have the club being extremely profitable and take out dividends. They will be in a position, but the problem is they were taking out dividends at a time when the club was losing money, when it needed investment. That's where the criticism comes in.
With no expertise in this area, here we are saying, okay, the Glazers are selling. Okay, next weekend we're going to be this new club. How long does this process take? One, from the selling point of view, I don't know this sell. Could it take 6 weeks like Chelsea, or is that a unique situation, or could it take 6 years? I know no idea how this sort of process works. Then ultimately, you talk about investment. I think when we mention investment and the way Ronaldo talks about investment, we're talking, okay, buy good players and sell the bad players. Ultimately, the investment is the infrastructure, which is the main cost. Like a stadium's not going to cost 20 million. You know, it's going to be in the millions, potentially billions, depending on what they do. So I'm just thinking, how long can we sort of look to until we can sort of see a bit of a brighter future? Like, yes, okay, new owners come in, but ultimately the new owners, regardless of their motive, regardless of their money, will need to make the right decisions and will need to sort of implement that good structure.
Yeah, in terms of a sale, I would actually expect by halfway next year. I reckon by the time the new season rolls around, we've got new owners in. I really do. And the reason I say that is, like, you referenced Chelsea there. They got it done within a month. And I know it was different circumstances and there was a requirement of Abramovich to sell. But in saying that, the fact it moves so quickly tells you these things can actually get done. If you're the Glazers, the only motive for you is to just get the highest dollar value. And I think that will be there. Ultimately, if they, and you know what, I unfortunately for them, I think Manchester United's never been less valuable. I think if they should have looked to sell probably 2 years ago, would have been the right spot for them. We're coming out of COVID. Like we said, the stadium needs investing. The squad needs investing.
Should have sold the day after they saw the day after Ronaldo arrived. That was the time.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. They should have. I think the club is worth less now. They're in the Europa League, of course. The club just reported a loss in the last financial year. So all in all, they've probably lost value on the club. And obviously, like we mentioned, interest rates, the way of the market, everything is inflated. So the value of the club is down. So it'll be interesting to see how much the club eventually sells for. But you would think that, let me then ask you this. What kind of buyer do we expect? Because I don't expect a nation state to come in, and I would actually think it'll be like a Chelsea model now. I think you're going to get a group of wealthy investors. I don't think there's one person out there who can afford United unless it's Jim Ratcliffe. Do you think it'll be Jim Ratcliffe?
My hunch says no. And again, who knows? And a huge part of it is, okay, we're saying, okay, this person has the money. They want to buy United. Okay, this group, they can afford it. They're going to invest a lot of money. The people who still hold the keys, unfortunately, the Glazers. If they have two buyers, they can choose who to sell to. Now, I don't know, maybe there's technicality where they can't in terms of law. I'm not sure in terms of how that process works. But ultimately, they're going to choose the new owners. Now, are they going to choose friends? Are they going to choose people who sort of they have a good relationship with? I'm not sure. So it's going to throw up an interesting debate, because here we are over the last 10 years. We've talked about Chelsea's ownership model in regards to Roman Abramovich come in. We've talked about PSG. We've talked about Manchester City. Here there is a World Cup in Qatar, which has brought up a lot of discussions in and around the area. And here we are. We've been very critical of that type of ownership, sort of football fans and Manchester United fans especially. Here we are saying one of our potential sort of get-out clauses and sort of looks to a brighter future is potentially down that path. Now, I'm not sure what's going to happen in regards to that, because ultimately the Glazers are still in charge. They hold the keys. They're going to sell to who they want to sell to. And it's hard. It's the old manager debate. We'll also sack the manager. Well, it's why I was never so heavy on sacking Solskjaer. Yeah, you want to sack Solskjaer? Well, who's bringing in? You bringing Avram Grant in? You bringing Sam Allardyce in? Well, no, then I'll keep Solskjaer. If you're going to bring Eric Ten Hag in, okay, sacking Solskjaer is the right decision. So with the Glazers, okay, get rid of the Glazers, that's fantastic. Well, you're just going to get Glazers 2.0 to come in. Well, ultimately, is it the right thing to do? So while I'm happy and sort of celebratory in regards to getting the Glazers out, we do have to have a discussion and look, what is the future going to look like under potential new owners?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. But look, I don't foresee another Glazer-like ownership. I think if you're a buyer now, if you're going to buy, let me put it this way, Tom. I think United won't sell for any less than $5 billion. How much did Chelsea go for? It was around $4 billion.
Chelsea one was interesting because Roman Abramovich didn't get any. The government went to. It was an interesting one. I think they were valued around that $3 or $4 billion. I'm not sure what the actual thing was. I think whoever got it, Toboli got it a little bit of a cut price deal.
Okay, so Chelsea sold for $4.25 billion. So if Chelsea's worth $4.25 billion, what's
United
Manchester
worth?
United worth?
Look, I understand. Okay, potentially we're losing a little bit of value, but ultimately they're $4 billion. This is not an exaggeration. I don't think United will go for this. It's Chelsea. Manchester United, different kettle of fish. You got to be $6 or $7 billion, which is crazy. But in terms of selling, I'd say around $5.5 billion.
Remember, like billion. When you're talking about billions, that's such a high number, right? Yep. And I think if Chelsea's worth $4.25 billion, I think to say United is worth $5 billion is a fair assessment, right? Because
it's a good way.
This isn't a transfer fees, billions of dollars.
I forgot you put the letter B there. In my mind, I was thinking million in regards to that. Is an interesting type.
So, all right, let's assume you're an owner. You buy Manchester United. You've bought Manchester United for $5 billion. If you're willing to cough up that kind of dough, surely you don't go in a transfer windows thinking, actually, we're just going to spend $50 million this summer.
Oh no, it's always that one. I remember, what was that? One of my favorite movies, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He's running for the taxi. And he said, I'll give you $50 for the taxi. He says, well, anyone paying 50 is willing to pay 70. So, okay, I'll give you 70. Well, look, anyone willing to pay 70, they're willing to pay 100. And I think that's very much along those lines. I forget what the actual figures were. But a comment here in regards to our selfish nature, we're looking at investment, we're looking at a transfer market and how we can improve on the pitch. Stephen puts a comment up here. If the intention is announced, this will impact on our potential striker to get in January. If the Glazers are selling, we're not splashing 50 million, 60 million on Cody Gakpo.
You know what? I actually think the opposite. I think we will. Because Manchester United, like we said, United's at its probably it's dropped in value. And the way that it works, look, I'm not going to tell you I'm a CEO or anything like that, but I know how banks assess assets. And the players fundamentally are assets. If you sign Cody, you just lost Ronaldo. So that actually drops the value of Manchester United, because if you look at him in terms of what he brings in, his commercial value, that's actually millions in terms of the asset leaving the club. So if you get a Cody Gakpo, someone who's 22, 23 years of age, who can potentially play 10 years at the club, I would actually say that actually adds to the value, because then you see the value of his contract, and that adds to the asset. So I actually think that the Glazers will be in a position to ask for more money if the squad is in a better position. If the squad is poor, then if you're a negotiator, then I can say, well, look at the state of this team. I need to invest serious amounts of money into this squad, and therefore the value of the club needs to reflect that. So there's two sides to this. So actually, if you're the Glazers, since it's not their money, I would actually recommend that they invest in January.
No, well, it's a point, George. Also, good to see you, mate. As always, sort of makes there, which you sort of clarified there. But you make a good point, and yes, I do agree in part. Ultimately, though, what do you think happens?
No, I think they'll invest in January. I think they'll get a striker, absolutely. Well, with Ronaldo gone, they have to. Martial might be, he might injuring himself, cutting some oranges at home. He'll get a paper cut without having any paper.
The striker though, plan A striker or plan B striker? In terms of get us over the line?
I don't think United can... Well, let me ask you this. What is a plan A striker in modern football? Erling Haaland, Robert Lewandowski, Karim Benzema.
The plan A is Erik ten Hag's first choice. If that's bloody Chris Wood from Newcastle, that's plan A.
My opinion with Ten Hag, and this is just purely based on what I've seen this season, I don't think he views players as, this is my starter, this is my second choice. I think he says, these are my attacking players. If you perform, you're going to start. If you don't perform, you're going to be second choice. And I think that's the way, because he likes fluidity in that front three. So I think Cody Gakpo would actually be perfect if you think of the fluidity that we saw at the start of the season.
Here, Chris, in regards to new owners, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk.
Elon Musk will sack half the club.
Yeah, I'd stake Elon Musk at the moment in regards to, I could see him changing the stadium name, changing the badge to a Liverpool badge.
Tesla Stadium for sure.
Just a nut job at the moment. Let him deal with Twitter, not Manchester United. But look, his name will definitely go in the hat. I'm not sure. I'm sure of it. But look, is there anything else? Just want to get everyone's thoughts in the live chat. If there's anything else, not only Man United, obviously it's a big day of the World Cup, so do get your thoughts in on the Australia-France game as well. But just is there anything I'm missing, Larry, in regards to talking points? And again, going back to Ronaldo, Ronaldo's been sacked by Manchester United. This is what really this video should be about. Like, it's kind of sadly, like a kind of monumental day in Manchester United history. We'll sort of remember this one. But obviously it's been trumped by the Glazers news as well. We're in the middle of a World Cup where Lisandro Martinez didn't play for, or he came off the bench for Argentina, probably should have started in regards to the way that game panned out and the way Argentina defended. So just those last sort of 12 hours, talk to me a little bit more about anything that does sort of tickle your fancy.
Sorry, Tom, can you say that again? You've dropped out a bit.
Is there anything that I've missed in regards to what an eventful day it has been? You got Lisandro Martinez not playing for or coming off the bench for Argentina. You got Australia losing at the World Cup. You got Ronaldo sacked. You got the Glazers selling. I'm sure I've missed something.
Who knows? You know what? I'm going to have a quick refresh because knowing our luck, by the time this video ends, there will be some breaking news. So let me have a quick look. Okay, something has come out. And just in terms of the costing of United, the sale of Manchester United could be far in excess of the club's stock market valuation. Since the latest news broke, the share price has risen by as much as 17%.
Yeah.
Wow, that's massive. That's massive. 17%. So to put that into retrospect, United, I'll put this in a perspective for you. United's share price since the Glazers took over has pretty much been stagnant.
Yeah. So
it's gone through peaks and droves, but ultimately the share price has remained stagnant at around $13 US per share. So if it's gone up by 17%, the shares, Jesus.
What role? Because look, we can talk about the Super League, we can talk about Ronaldo, we can talk about interest rates, all these things. We want to sort of puff our chest out as fans and be proud of what we do, sort of thing. And some fans do more than others. Some fans are bigger hypocrites. Look at me. I'm a hypocrite. I've got a bloody Lego set behind me, for God's sake, for sort of funding Manchester United. But what role has the fans potentially played in this? Now, we can go back to the COVID times in regards to Super League and sort of the pressure that was put on the Glazers for, again, it was a directed incident in regards to Super League, but the role the fans have played in these recent protests, the protests back in 2010, the protests before the Glazers took over in 2005. If the Glazers are to sell, what role has the fans played in this?
Definitely a hand. I think it's been a slow burn for the Glazers. We have to, I think you can go back to, look, I don't think any of the protests did much. I think the day that they got a game called off was really telling.
I think that was the biggest moment in regards to any type of Glazers out movement.
Absolutely. I think that was the turning point, to be honest. The Super League. The Super League decision was ultimately, I think that's where you can look back and say that's where it all turned. And then when we went, because it was United-Liverpool the following week, and we obviously saw fans broke into the stadium, ended up on the pitch. So like we said at the start of the video, I think the Glazers will look back. The Super League was their smoking gun, and unfortunately, it didn't come off for them. And
Would you say,
it's
and we're not
ultimately led to
experts in how Liverpool are run, but touch on a little bit earlier, would you say it's just on the outlook of looking at things without the sort of facts? It's just the same thing with Liverpool. They've realised, okay, the Super League hasn't worked. We've taken this club as far as we can. We've won a few trophies. Time for something else, and it's almost what the Glazers have done now. Our ultimate goal of the Super League isn't there. We've run our course.
It's interesting, it's one of two things. It's either the thing with Liverpool, and I have to give credit where it's due, that they've run the club in a way where they've spent less than United, but have just put in the right people to make the right decisions. But the problem with Liverpool now, if you look at that squad, it's aging. And again, they're going to need a lot of investment. So it's either the owners are saying, we don't really want to do this. And I will say for Liverpool, they've been doing some development in one of the stands at Anfield, though. So they have been investing in the stadium.
They're doing another one as well. Like they're moving on to the next stand as well.
Yeah. So, so they've continued to develop the club despite looking to potentially sell. You know what's really interesting? If you look at this news that's breaking on the Glazers, it seems United are actually further along in the process than Liverpool are.
Well, yeah, these things happen. These things happen behind the scenes, and as I say, it could be mumbling on for about a year or 2 years. Who knows? But it's interesting. I listen to Stephen Howson, who's been on the podcast before, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners do listen to him. He made a good point, which I do remember. Sort of, if you just look back through the calendar, obviously the facts are there to be seen, but just a stark reminder in regards to Old Trafford and the stadium. It has not changed one bit. They've upgraded the disabled area in the last maybe 2 or 3 years. The only thing that has changed.
It was under Louis Van Gaal that happened, or Mourinho.
Yeah, well, the process has just finished now over the last year or two, but ultimately the stadium has not changed. The only thing that has changed since the day the Glazers walked in the door is the quadrants have been filled in sort of those two top corners. You know where they are, the two quadrants. Yeah. However, he made a good point that they were paid for or funded. The decision was made to put those in before the Glazers had taken over. So I'm just thinking since 2005, there has, if you want to say upgrade in the disabled section, is investment. I'm not sure, but there has simply been no investment in Old Trafford in their whole tenure.
Let me put this to you, Tom. Upgrade of the disabled section. Do you know where the disabled section is at Old Trafford?
I do know where it was, right in front of the away fans. It's kind of scattered
behind
now.
The goals. It's the craziest, most unsafe place for people.
Oh, there's net in there. There's net in there.
There's netting there, but there's so much room for error there. Let's assume on one flimsy day, that net has a break in it. There's a ball that goes straight towards someone who lives with a disability.
Now, the biggest issue they had, obviously, a lot of people do know Alex Neild, young Alex Neild. I'm sure everyone watches his YouTube.
Off him.
No, the biggest issue they had, I remember years ago, was PSG. When PSG came to Old Trafford, the first leg of the game, their fans were nuts and throwing stuff, and where is it going to land? Right in front of them in the disabled area. And that was a big issue they had. I'm not sure what part that played in sort of potentially relocating parts of the disabled section. But it's just one of those things. When you do look back at that 2005, you look at Old Trafford, Manchester United, the best in class, the pride of all Europe and all these things. Old Trafford, we still think it's in my opinion, it's still the best stadium in the world. Like it's just something about it. It is special. But ultimately, when you look at the facts of the investment, it simply had nothing. And you look at stadiums that they've popped up overnight in Qatar, for God's sake. They've popped up around the corner from our place over the last couple of years. Stadiums can go up like that. And simply we haven't got a coat of paint on the best stadium in the world.
I'll be honest with you. So, I mean, in the last 3 years, I've been to the camp, the new camp. I've been to the Bernabeu. I saw Tottenham Stadium when I was over there recently. And even the Emirates, I got to say, Emirates is a really impressive stadium. You go through the interior, it's beautiful. The thing that makes Old Trafford, I actually compare the new camp and Old Trafford, and I'll lump them in together. They both, they carry a history, and there's a feeling, that there's a soul in the building. And ultimately, that's what you're talking about, I think. And that's what makes those stadiums special. But when you walk through Spurs Stadium, it is best in class. Lighting, the seating, the viewpoint, and you can get a good
you can put new seats, you can put new lighting in and keep that history.
Yes, of course you can, but that still requires investment. I think when you look at the infrastructure of Tottenham Stadium, it just feels new. Yeah. And the problem with United is whatever they do, I think because when I think of Old Trafford, and I'm sure you're the same, and to the listeners here, get your comments in what you think as well. If you've been to Old Trafford, the brick layout is what stays with me. It's the bricks.
Yeah.
No modern stadium has that. So it'll be really interesting to see if in any redevelopment, or even if they decide to knock it down, how do they keep that historic feeling while ensuring that that it's still modern and new and appealing for people to come have a positive experience.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people, in terms of arguing both sides of the coin, sort of often forget it in regards to investment. And we can talk about Old Trafford and especially Carrington. When Carrington's the best training ground in the world in the early 2000s, we're not complaining because that investment has been made. But ultimately, the investment needed to be made because the previous ground wasn't good enough. So we would have been having a discussion that the previous ground wasn't suitable and we needed investment. So we're at this stage now with Old Trafford and Carrington saying both venues are not good enough to be the best in the world, so they need investment. So ultimately, we're going to have the investment and they will improve. And Carrington and Old Trafford will be the best in the world. And suddenly in 15 years' time, Tottenham will need investment. So Tottenham are getting the praise now in regards to they're the best in class. Well, ultimately, that best in class in 10 years won't be. So I think we have run a little bit of a cycle because this, unfortunately, our cycle should not have been 15 years.
Yeah, that's true. Look, ultimately, I think Manchester United need a lot of investment. Let me then ask you this. Let's play a bit of a fun game here. You're the new owner. Cash isn't an issue, but you have to have a reasonable amount of capital. What's your priority when you get into Manchester United? So let's assume you've got 500 million, okay? Because they're going to have to budget something. Because if you just have a layout of 5.5 billion, you're going to need to, spend, but within reason. So do invest. Let's assume you have 500 million to spend, Tom. Does that go into the squad? Does that go into Carrington? Or does that go into the stadium?
I think it's hard. My initial reaction, without giving too much thought, is sort of looking back and just the core. And I look at the infrastructure. I look at the stadium. I look at sort of that behind-the-scenes work. But then I also look at, new owners and new managers, we still need
Tom,
success.
I think Manchester United have...
Yeah, I saw Stephen just put a comment here. If you can just check your phone, I just saw here. It does look like
I've got it here. I'll read it out. Manchester United PLC, which is reference to publicly listed company, one of the most successful. Okay, I'll skip through all of that. Is commencing a process to explore strategic alternatives for the club. The process is designed to enhance the club's future growth, with the ultimate goal of positioning the club to capitalize on opportunities both on the pitch and commercially. As part of this process, the board will consider all strategic alternatives, including new investment into the club, a sale, or other transactions involving the company. This will include an assessment of several initiatives to strengthen the club, including stadium and infrastructure redevelopment, an expansion of the club's commercial operations on a global scale, each in the context of enhancing the long-term success of the club's men's, women's, and academy teams, and bringing benefit to fans and other stakeholders. I just want to say there is a statement from Avram and Joel. So if they've put out
they talk to that.
Yeah, they found their tongues apparently. The strength of Manchester United rests on the passion and loyalty of our global community of 1.1 billion fans and followers. United don't have 1.1 billion fans. I'll get to that in a minute. As we seek to continue to build on the club's history of success, the board has authorized a thorough evaluation of strategic alternatives. We will evaluate all options to ensure that we best serve our fans and Manchester United maximize the significant growth opportunities available to the club today and into the future. Throughout this process, we will remain fully focused on serving the best interests of our fans, shareholders, and various stakeholders. And then the other part here, so Rain Group looks like they're acting on behalf of the club to help them through this process. Oh, Rothschild & Co. is acting as an exclusive financial advisor to the Glazer family. Do you want to get into politics, Tom? Rothschild's family. Let's go.
Well, that is a discussion for another day. But in regards to that, look, if you're happy, it looks like the Glazers do have 1 foot out the door. Please do leave a like on the video. That'd be very much appreciated. And if you're on the live chat, do get all your thoughts in. There's a line earlier in that sort of statement you did read out, Larry, in regards to, again, maybe a little bit cynical on my half. Tell me if I'm wrong or just your thoughts in it. In regards to they're looking at strategic options in regards to new investment. And then they said, or possible sale. The Glazers and the club, we're just saying, okay, yeah, the Glazers are selling, that's great. Is there a scenario, unfortunately, where maybe it is just a different avenue of new investment where they still remain with the club?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. What I found interesting is that they're not ruling out a sale, but it looks like they're putting all options out there.
Yeah.
And the thing that the part that actually does interest me about this statement, Tom, is there's almost an acknowledgement that there needs to be an improvement in basically every section of the club. And like, I'll put my hands up here. We don't really cover the women's side of things too much. But in saying that, with some of the reports, Casey Stone quit.
Yeah.
She quit as manager because of the treatment of the women's team. They were being told to walk to like cabins to use bathrooms. It's unacceptable, And
Their dressing room, their dressing room were the containers. You see the old truck containers.
And and I think truthfully, and it's for us to cover the women's game. The club need to show an interest in the women's game themselves. Because if the club don't really invest in it or show an interest in it, it's hard for you as fans to get an interest in it. I follow it. I see the results. They're top of the table. They're doing well. But ultimately, the club, it's an afterthought. And they're an afterthought because, once again, a part of the club that needs investment simply doesn't have the investment. The women should have their own stadium. And I think the same
that was my next point. In regards to the stadium and the women's and tie this into the youth, what role has Manchester City, now this has been a long role, and obviously they came in 2008, whenever it was, and they've obviously gone on to achieve what they have. What role has Manchester City played in regards to this? Because we as fans, if Tottenham will win in the league every second season or West Brom or Aston Villa will win in the league, would be frustrated. We need to be better. But ultimately, you think, okay, it is what it is. It's when it's Manchester City and Liverpool winning leagues and Champions Leagues, that's what sort of frustrated a lot of our sort of emotion. So in regards to what Manchester City have done, new stadiums for the women's team, new stadium for the youth team, that sort of built up sort of around the Etihad and made that a whole complex, made sort of invested in the community as a whole. What role has that played in putting pressure on Manchester United? Because since they've come in, since the Glazers have come in and the new City owners have come in, United's gone one way, the City have gone the other way. And I'm just thinking that has added to so much frustration and anger in the perception of both clubs. So I'm just thinking, just your thoughts on what role, not positively, but ultimately City has played in United's downfall.
Massive. City are showing what the prototype of a football club should be. They're saying we are the epitome of what success looks like, best in class. And that's the difference. They strive to be the number one club in the world. United have been saying, how do we spend enough to be competitive or just to remain in the conversation? Doesn't cut it anymore. The City have a stadium for their academy players. Have you seen the overview of Manchester City's complex? It's phenomenal to look at. It's phenomenal. So ultimately, and I've seen there was a comment here, I think it was by Clancy, the women should play at Old Trafford. I don't think they should. I think they need their own identity because Old Trafford, you have to remember, when you walk in at Old Trafford, you're thinking of the history that's gone into Old Trafford. I think the women actually need their own stadium so they can build their own identity, their own memories, their own stadium. I think by playing them at Old Trafford...
I think just from a point of view, and we have the discussion with A-League where we play in front of 100,000-seat stadiums with 7,000 people in there. I think it's one where the women game for whatever reason, they're not going to get crowds. They're not going to get 70,000 every week. You want them playing in front of an atmosphere. Now, so obviously give them the opportunity and platform to have games at Old Trafford, which they do. They maybe should have more in regards to when the pitch is available. But ultimately, yes, you do want them playing in front of packed stadiums. So do what Manchester City do, have a sort of 15, 20,000 seat stadium as the game grows. Now, if they eventually sort of the demand for women's tickets is, they sort of can sell 50,000 seats, okay, move to Old Trafford. But ultimately, for now, you don't want people playing, whether it be A-League, women's football, whatever level. You don't want 300 people watching in a 70,000 seat stadium. It's not good for the players. It's not a good product. Obviously, when you watch behind closed door football, it's not the same. You want a packed stadium. So that's where I do. Look, I understand where Stephen's coming from, but ultimately, no, I do think they need their own ground and sort of not own identity, but you know what I mean in regards to, I don't think Old Trafford, in terms of the stage, is ideal in regards to promoting their product. I think that just looks like empty seats watching a training game, unfortunately. But I do know where he's coming from. But look, the women's team will be invested in, the youth will be invested in regards to that. That is something that has been let down in recent seasons. Obviously, you do look at what Manchester City have done. Now, maybe our record is a little bit better than Manchester City in regards to players coming through and having a career. Obviously, Manchester City at the moment, you probably look at some prime example, but probably only Phil Foden has come through. See, Manchester United had a few more, but obviously cream of the crop in regards to Phil Foden. But any sort of lasting thought? Or we're going to continue this debate for many days, many weeks, many months. But in regards to these last couple of hours, that statement, etc., talk to me a little bit more about anything that does come up.
Yeah, look, it'll be interesting. I think we'll watch this. We'll watch this space closely, and obviously, if anything comes out, we'll go live with it. We'll bring that news to you. And I suppose being on the other side of the world, our reaction will be different. And we'll give you the view of the global fan base. So if you want something, if you want to understand the view of, because I think that's where we do differ from the local Manchester fans, and I understand their frustrations as well. Suppose being so close to it, but I think from our perspective we actually get a more holistic view, because we've been Old Trafford, so we know what it's like to be the everyday going fan, but how it feels to actually follow something from afar and still follow it with a passion and a love. So I'll personally be interested to see, Tom, how this develops, because they did make reference to the statement in terms of how do we extend our brand globally, and then I just wonder if you look at what Manchester City have done as well. Melbourne City, obviously, we've got them. They come under the parent club of the Manchester brand, and I wonder if United are serious about expanding their global brand. Any goal of any new owners should actually be: should we invest in a club in Australia? Should we invest in a club in the US? That's how you extend your brand further to really, for the Australian fan, for the Asian fan, for the American fan, to feel that little bit closer to the club. So I'll be really interested to see how this news develops.
No, definitely. Well, look, it has been an emotional or eventful day, and obviously emotional from a Manchester United point of view. Before we just do wrap up, and if there is anything else in the live chat you do want to discuss, throw it in the chat. But obviously, Larry, Glazers aside, Ronaldo aside, we are in the middle of a World Cup, and what a day it has been. Australia took the lead against France. France ultimately got their shit together and sort of I didn't actually watch too much of the game because I was scrolling through all this Ronaldo and Glazers news. But ultimately, earlier in the day, I don't know if it's an overreaction or looking back. Maybe someone can sort of throw up other examples, which there are obvious extreme examples which do spring to mind. But ultimately, Saudi Arabia coming from behind to beat Argentina, I'm talking World Cup history there. Like that's a historic moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Saudi Arabia yesterday.
They had so much energy. The energy they had in that game defending, I thought, oh my God, like 80th minute, they're closing down. I thought, look, I understand the occasion can sort of give you that extra 5%. But my God, they had an extra 55%.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I got to be honest. I like, as a neutral, in Argentina, one of those teams you enjoy watching, and like you just, as United fans, you're in love with Lisandro Martinez, and you know what? It's karma for him not starting.
Well, no, he should. Well, when he came on, obviously clean sheet for Argentina, but I also think he just looked like, I don't sound stupid, obviously. He looked like Lisandro Martinez out there, exactly what he provides for Manchester United, he was providing for Argentina. And I think any team is better than that. They have at the back Otamendi, for God's sake. Like, I thought he left Manchester City years ago. Now I'm sure he's still playing at a high level and deserving of his spot. You do look at what Argentina have achieved in recent years in regards to their winning record. But ultimately, Lisandro Martinez has got to start their next game. Because, okay, they didn't find a way through eventually. Now, they could have had 4 goals in regards to 1 or 2 decisions in regard to the offside rule in the first half. But ultimately, they'll let down at the back. And another day that they find a way through, they score those 4 goals. That'll happen with Lionel Messi and players like that in the team. But ultimately, let down at the back until Lisandro Martinez came on. So hopefully, he can work his way back into the starting 11.
Yeah, I hope so. Look, in my opinion, call me biased, I think Lisandro Martinez is in the conversation for best defenders in the world right now. I mean, the stats don't lie. When he's
important playing, yeah, he's definitely worth the discussion. I think in terms of people's preference on what they want from a defender, but ultimately what he's given everything. There's like,
but his actual defending is good. His one-on-one defending is good. The only thing and the only vulnerability I've seen in his game, every now and then in the Premier League, players have been getting in behind him.
He's not the quickest, but that happens with defenders. Yeah,
but you know what? Daley Blind, if that guy was. If you remember his time at United, Tom, if he was a little bit taller or a bit quicker, he would have been the world's best centre back. But he was short in both departments.
I even thought in number 6 and like a bit of a Michael Carrick role. I was always a little bit frustrated he didn't get more minutes there. I thought he's a fantastic player. And look, that was a Jose Mourinho decision for whatever. Just that happens. Some players and managers sort of not fall out, but have different sort of styles, and that does happen. Rob Hughes saying, "Rumors coming out they want $6 billion." That's where, look, we had that discussion in regards to billion, million. You do have to
You
sort of take that
start
into
high, Rob.
consideration.
That's negotiation 101. If you know you're going to land here, start here.
Well, but
And
we
me
talk
and
about
Bag on
value.
board.
We talk about value. We talk about share price. We talk about current success and history and weighing everything up. We always say, what's the biggest club in the world? Man United. We say Man United. Real Madrid will say Real Madrid. No matter how successful Manchester City are, Manchester City will never be as big a club as ours. But maybe value-wise, maybe an investor would see them as more valuable and spend more money
Well,
on them.
let me put
If
this
that was
to
the
you.
case.
Let me put this to you. If you're the Glazers, and as we've seen, they've never put their own money into the club. The club just in the last fiscal year, they reported a loss of £12 million. If that's the case, if you're not going to put your own money into a product, they're negotiating from a power of weakness, not a power of strength. The club's not in a position for them to demand the highest dollar. They're going to get lowballed, essentially.
But what I sort of go back to, like we talk about that figure, $6 billion. Deep down in our heart, we do say this: Manchester United are the biggest club in the world, and maybe a valuation of a club can sort of maybe give us an accurate answer on who the biggest club in the world is. But in regards to all these things happening, and as bad as we're run, as unsuccessful as we are, is Manchester United, in regards to the way we view everything on a whole, still the biggest club in the world, or would you look at a Real Madrid or?
Look, in terms of value, Real Madrid is the most valuable club in the world. Like that's just factual. That's not.
Yeah.
Real Madrid. I believe it's Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United. So I think
Barcelona. I don't get that. Look, I do get that. I understand how the valuations work, but when you look at what's happening with them and their financial situation, it's crazy that they're still valued there. But I understand how that value does work.
Yes, but they turn over $1 billion a year. So they're making. To put that into perspective, United turnover. So this is before profit. I think United turnover around 600 million at their peak. They didn't turn that around in the last fiscal year. So, I mean, that's a lot of dough. That's a lot of serious dough. But the problem with Barcelona is the funds
they're on edge.
Getting out.
They're on edge, though.
Barca, they can go into administration at any time. It would not surprise me. But nonetheless, so when you're talking about valuation, that's how it is. But can I say, I think Manchester United as a brand has the potential to be the biggest club in the world, because the Premier League, there's no league with more eyes on it than the Premier League, and United have the history to be up there with Real Madrid. Now, it would take time. That they would need to secure more Champions Leagues, I think, and get back to fighting for league titles. But if they had a sustained success, then there's no reason not to. You know what will be interesting as well, Tom? Mbappe's contract situation. I think with new owners, if they can put a good business project towards, I know you're pulling. I know. I would not be shocked.
No, I said it last week with Ronaldo leaving. I said, in terms of, and look, it's a discussion for another day. In regards to this, is before the Glazers were selling. In regards to the way the Glazers go about their business, it wouldn't shock you if they go out and splash it on Mbappe.
No, it wouldn't. And if you look at the footballer, and I've got to say, even just watching him against Australia,
the way he played today, I understand the baggage he does bring, but my God, the way he does play.
But he's so good. He's so good. He has everything. And I like Martial, but if I could swap him with Mbappe up front, mate, please.
God, if you give Mbappe the right attitude and the right mentality and sort of give him a good relationship with Eric Ten Hag, could you imagine if Eric Ten Hag liked him and like Mbappe liked Eric Ten Hag and there was no issues?
No, scary.
I'm sorry, we're not signing Mbappe. I don't want to sign Mbappe, but my God, he's a player.
You say that, man. I'd take him in a heartbeat. You'd buy his shirt. You'd be the first one.
Yeah,
you'd be the first one out.
Yeah, no, definitely. But it's like when we signed Ronaldo. We sat here 2 years ago, whenever it was, saying, look, we celebrated, the shirt was off, celebrating Ronaldo as a rival. All of us said it's the wrong side and we shouldn't get him. It's going to end in tears. Now, we didn't know that tears would end.
Tell you what, if we signed Ronaldo, when in Sir Alex's final season, when there were rumors of Ronaldo returning, and there was something to that, I think Sir Alex retiring ultimately killed that deal. If Ronaldo returns at that time, let's say Ronaldo returns at 30, because he's clearly been so good after 30. If we signed him at 30, it'd be a different feeling. The problem is we've signed him on the wrong side of 35. And I think that's where it's all soured.
If Sir Alex stayed, it would have been interesting if he signed and Sir Alex left and he was there with David Moyes and Louis van Gaal. Maybe he doesn't go on. Well, he definitely wouldn't have probably had a career that he went on to have at Real Madrid. But look, it's interesting because ultimately it needed to be done. So I'm happy Ronaldo has left. But ultimately, in regards to the whole situation, I'm sad how it's ended. But ultimately, it is best for both player and club. So we can look forward to a sort of brighter future under Eric Ten Hag. Fingers crossed we can look to a far brighter future away from the Glazers. Fingers crossed this can sort of accelerate and we can sort of get one or two more sort of confirmed news and reports. Obviously, the club has made a statement, which is sort of a step in the right direction. Ultimately, we're still enjoying the World Cup. It's a good football. Another 4th game on tonight. But Larry, an eventful day. Here we are bringing people content 8 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday, 5 minutes to 5. So we need to get ready to kick on with our day. And look, what an overnight it has been. Both good and bad, but ultimately looking back at everything, very, very positive for Manchester United.
Absolutely. So if you are new, make sure you do subscribe. In terms of content, there's England USA on the weekend, which I'll definitely be watching with a close eye. But I think we can we'll obviously assess how United players are going. We normally do the Friday night pint as well, so look out for that. Lots of content coming your way. So if you are new, make sure you are subscribed. And cheers to all the legends for joining us in the morning. Tom, that coffee has not kicked in, mate. I'm actually struggling. So please, please be sympathetic to how we're feeling. I'm ready for bed.
Well, you're going to need a few tonight because I'm just looking at the fixtures of the World Cup tonight and rejogging my memory if I might be wrong here, but it looks like no Manchester United players are in action. It looks like we have Morocco, Croatia, Germany, Japan, Spain, Costa Rica, and Belgium v Canada. So, look, well, I've taken interest in those 4 games. From a Manchester United perspective, not much to discuss tonight in regards to the overnight fixtures, but after that, the next day, obviously got the big guns in regards to Brazil, Portugal, so that'll be very interesting. I'm sure we'll bring you plenty of content.
Tell you who's one to watch for Canada, Jonathan David. If you're talking about United looking for replacement,
his name always pops up. To be honest, I've never seen him play, but I always hear the name pop up. Plays at Lille, I think.
And, I like him. I mean, I haven't watched Lille closely. I've done my YouTube scouting, but he's a complete striker. Very quick, good with back to goal, good dribbler, good pace. I think he's one to watch.
Let's hope he doesn't score because we've seen what a goal in the World Cup does to Cody Gakpo's price. And if Manchester United need a striker, we can't have them performing at the World Cup because we do need them to come in January. Because, look, at the end of the day, we're going to buy a striker in January. Is it going to be plan A striker, plan B? I'm not sure. But Ronaldo is gone, so we do need a number 9, which is ultimately exciting. Who doesn't like a new striker at Old Trafford? There's always something that does get you very excited. So until then, please do leave a like on the video. Not sure when we'll be back live next. Maybe there's a bit more breaking news. Maybe we'll come back with something tonight, or if not, something a little bit World Cup related tomorrow. But do appreciate everyone joining us on this early morning, or maybe you're late at night over in the UK. But hope everyone has a good day, and Larry and I will chat to you. Cheers.
Cheers.